قل أوحي إلي أنه استمع نفر من الجن فقالوا إنا سمعنا قرآنا عجبا يهدي إلى الرشد فآمنا به ولن نشرك بربنا أحدا.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. My dear brothers and sisters in Islam, I welcome you all to our 5th episode on the topic of the challenges in the life of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And today, inshallah, as promised, we are going to look at some interesting events that happened between the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam with the other world, the world of the unseen. So the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam returned back from Ta'if, victimized, abused and disappointed over the people of Thaqif. And he is now returning back to his residence, to Makkah al-Mukarramah, and he draws closer to a particular place known as An-Nakhla, or Wad al-Nakhla, the valley of palm trees. And this place up till today is known as An-Nakhla. And there are some signs, of course, I'm going to share with you, inshallah. Those of you that would like to visit, Al-Haramain or Mamlaka, or you intend for Umrah or Hajj, you probably can make a point to go to this place. However, we need to clarify that visiting these places does not add any remit in Islam. It won't add you any value. It doesn't have any specific reward. But for the purpose of historical sites, there's nothing wrong with it. But also, if you are going to pray in that masjid, there's a masjid, soon inshallah I'm going to share with you. So the Prophet ﷺ returns back from Ta'if, victimized, abused, disappointed, and as he gets closer to Al-Haram, to the Mecca, and he comes to this particular place known as An-Nakhla, the valley of palm trees. And it was early hours of the morning, in the third portion of the night. The Prophet ﷺ took a break. And he devoted himself in the worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in the ibadah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in Qiyamul Layl. And this was the practice of Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. وَمِنَ اللَّيْلِ فَتَهَجَّدَ بِهِ نَافِلَةً لَكَ. Allah proves to the night schedules of Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam that he would spend quite extensive amount of time in night prayers. إن ربك يعلم أنك تقوم أدنى من ثلثي الليل ونصفه وثلثه وطائفة من الذين معك. Allah says that we have seen it all. إن ربك يعلم, verily your Rabb, your honor, your master, the one that controls your life, is fully aware of your night prayers and that of your followers. This was the systematic life of Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam. He is victimized, yes. He is in pain, yes. But he is going to devote himself in night prayers, alayhi salatu wassalam. So at Wad Nakhla, he engages in Qiyamul Layl, and he begins reciting the Holy Quran in Qiyamul Layl. Subhanallah al-Azim. At the same time, there was a delegation of Jinn. Delegation of Jinn that came from Naseebeen. Where is Naseebeen? Naseebeen is a place in Sham, in Syria, in Damascus. It was a group of them, as the Quran says. We're going to look at these verses. وَإِذْ صَرَفْنَا إِلَيْكَ نَفَرًا مِنَ الْجِنِّ يَسْتَمِعُونَ الْقُرْآنَ. Remember my messenger Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam, when I appointed a number of jinn that patrolled from Naseebeen and came closer to you while you were devoted in your worship in night praise at An-Nakhla, and they came to listen to your Quran. This place that we are talking about now is now currently, there is a current masjid that is built on there. Is known as Masjid al-Jinn. Alhamdulillah, I was privileged to go and visit this place, and I entered in the masjid as well, and I performed my Tahiyyat al-Masjid in this, Masjid al-Jinn. So these jinns came, this delegation of jinn came to this place, where is now known as Masjid al-Jinn. Initially, in ancient days, known as Wadi al-Nakhla, and they came to listen to the recitation of Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam. So, and the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam cannot see the unseen without the permission of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because the jinn, Allah says, إِنَّهُ يَرَاكُمْ هُوَ وَقَبِيلُهُ مِنْ حَيْثُ لَا تَرَوْنَهُمْ. The jinn, they can see us, but we cannot see them. So the Prophet ﷺ did not physically see the jinn, according to the majority of scholars, but he was informed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala of their presence. Subhanallah. So these jinn came, and how did they present themselves before Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam? And what was the dialogue between them? This, inshallah, will be our next segment in this episode, inshallah. So don't go away. Stay around while we answer these questions. So as we have mentioned, 9 of them came. And you must be wondering, what made these jinn travel from Naseebeen, Sham, Damascus to Arabia? What made them travel? So you might be aware or not, prior to the advent of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and prior to the revelation of the Holy Quran, the jinn themselves, prior to the revelation of the Quran, they were allowed to go to the heavens, to go to the first heaven. They would pile up one on top of another, and they would reach the first heaven, and these are the powers that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given them. And what would they do when they go to the first heaven? They would eardrop to the conversation of the angels. They would overhear and listen to the discussion of the angels, and they would grab that information, they would grasp that information, and then pass it on to the magicians, sorcerers, and fortune tellers. So time went past by until Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala willed to obstruct the jinn from reaching the first heaven and overhearing to the conversation of the angels. And this was to safeguard the Quran so that they do not mix up the message of Islam and the message of the Quran. So as the jinn themselves have mentioned this, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala have told us of the description of the jinn on how they were obstructed to reach the heaven in Surah Al-Jinn. This is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Al-Jinn. وَأَنَّا كُنَّا نَقْعُدُ مِنْهَا مَقَاعِدَ لِلسَّمْعِ فَمَنْ يَسْتَمِعِ الْآنَ يَجِدْ لَهُ شِهَابًا رَصَدًا. So the jinn, they have informed us they're in positions for hearing to the conversation of the angels, right? But then the jinn say, فَمَنْ يَسْتَمِعِ الْآنَ يَجِدْ لَهُ شِهَابًا رَصَدًا. But after the revelation of the Holy Quran, whoever intends to do that, they will be followed with a burning flame which will lie in the anticipation of that particular individual. So this is the explanation of the Quran itself in terms of the obstruction of the jinn from eardropping to the conversation of the angels. So understand that the jinn love this, that they are overhearing to the conversation of the angels. So when they were obstructed from hearing to the conversation of the angels, they became restless and they became furious and they were unhappy with it. So the chief shaitan, the chief of the jinn, and that is Iblis himself, thought that there is something divine that is occurred on the earth, and because of that particular thing, this is why they are obstructed from reaching the heavens and overhearing to the conversation of the angels. So he appointed a group of jinn to patrol around the world and to investigate the matter. And this is when they made their way to An-Nakhla, and it was the plans of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it was the qadr, the predestination of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that these jinn will make their way and interact with Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam at An-Nakhla on the return of Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam from the people of Thaqif. And subhanallah, look how privileged were these shayateen, these jinn, these delegation of the jinn. Allah privileged them that they came to meet the noblest man that ever walked on the surface of this earth, and they made their presence at the noble time, and that is during the third portion of the night, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala descends to the first heaven. And this is authenticated in hadith books. And also they came to listen to the recitation of the noblest book at the noblest time and from the blessed mouth of Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. So it was a combination of blessings. Blessing of the time, they came at the blessed time, and they came to interact with the noblest, the blessed person, Muhammad alayhi salam, and they came to listen to the blessed recitation from the blessed man and from the noble scripture of the Quran. And at this time, some scholars mentioned that Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam was reciting Surah Al-Rahman, and he recited Surah Al-Rahman to them. Of course, there are variation of narration. We have to acknowledge that and appreciate these various narrations. But some of them suggest that alayhi salam recited Surah Al-Rahman to them. And subhanallah, here there is a point of reflection. You understand that the Prophet ﷺ was heartbroken. He was disappointed. He was totally disappointed and also despondent of the people of Thaqif, given all the efforts that he has put in place, walked through the valleys of Arabia, through the mountains, 8 days of journey, and then he's pelted, and none of them accepts his message, right? But here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sends a young boy, the Addas, right, from the Iraq, who embraced Islam, but at the same time Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam solace, and that is directing the world of jinn to him. Did the Prophet ﷺ interact with jinn before that? No. This was the first time that Muhammad ﷺ is interacting with the world of the jinn, and it was also the first time for the jinn to interact with Muhammad ﷺ. So Allah was sending a strong message to Muhammad ﷺ, that, O messenger, O my messenger, if the people of Thaqif have rejected you, and the people in Mecca are rejecting you, I will send another creation of mine that will value you. Point of reflection. Sometimes we feel that our audience are not responding to us. The masjid that we are involved in, the community that we are involved in, the organization that we are involved in is not accepting us anymore. But does this mean that you should sit back and become despondent in life? No, you should never give up. One masjid can throw you out, or another community can throw you out, or an organization can throw you out. But as long as you are not thrown out of the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, there will always be an alternative audience to listen to. So this is the first message that we get from the visit of the delegation of the Jinn from Naseebeen to An-Nakhla in Arabia. How did they present themselves? And this is another point of reflection, right? So these Jinn, when they came, this delegation of Jinn, when they came, they in fact behaved themselves and showed utmost respect in the presence of the Muhammad S.A.W, and also when they were listening to the Quran. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Al-Jinn itself, what does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that He mentions about this Jinn, وَإِنَّهُ لَمَّا قَامَ عَبَدُ اللَّهِ يَدْعُوهُ كَادُوا يَكُونُونَ عَلَيْهِ لِبَدًا. And that when the servant of Allah, Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, stood up in supplicating to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in Qiyamul Layl, on his return from the people of Thaqif at An-Nakhla, right? And the Jinn came to interact with him. كَادُوا يَكُونُونَ عَلَيْهِ لِبَدًا. They almost became about him a compacted mess, meaning that they piled themselves up, and this is how the Jinn behave themselves. And when we sit maybe by each other, right? The Jinn can pile up. Okay, so these are the flexibility and ability that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given them. كَادُوا يَكُونُونَ عَلَيْهِ لِبَدًا. They crowded this place to an extent that they were piling up on top of one another. And subhanallah, the Quran also mentions that when they began listening to the Holy Quran, they warned one another. They advised one another to remain silent and to pay attention. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Al-Ahqaf, ayah 29 up till ayah 31. وَإِذْ صَرَفْنَا إِلَيْكَ نَفَرًا مِنَ الْجِنِّ يَسْتَمِعُونَ الْقُرْآنَ فَلَمَّا حَضَرُوهُ قَالُوا أَنصِتُوا فَلَمَّا قُضِيَ وَلَّوْا إِلَىٰ قَوْمِهِمْ مُنذِرِينَ. Ayat and ayah after that. Translation. وَإِذْ صَرَفْنَا إِلَيْكَ نَفَرًا مِنَ الْجِنِّ يَسْتَمِعُونَ الْقُرْآنَ. Remember, O my Messenger of Allah, and mention to the people, اذكر يعني وإذ meaning اذكر, mention and remember when we directed to you a few delegation of the Jinn from Naseebeen Damascus to Arabia to An-Nakhla, listening to the Quran. فَلَمَّا حَضَرُوهُ قَالُوا أَنصِتُوا. And when they attended the recitation of the Quran of Muhammad S.A.W, قَالُوا أَنصِتُوا, they advised one another. What they saying? Pay attention. أَنصِتُوا, be silent and be quiet. Listen attentively and quietly. And when the recitation of the Holy Quran was over, when it was concluded, وَلَّوْا إِلَىٰ قَوْمِهِمْ مُنذِرِينَ. They went back to their people in Naseebeen, in Sham, as warners and callers of Islam. They became du'at of Islam. Another point of reflection. We learn from this that we need to value the Quran. We need to respect the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And mind you, don't think that respecting the Holy Quran is only, taking the Mus'haf and then kissing it, put it on a higher place. No. That is one way of respecting the Quran. We're not mentioning the fiqh and the juristic evidence or discussion regarding kissing the Quran, and that is another topic on its own. But respecting the Holy Quran is in many ways. The minimum that we can do, is to try to implement the Quran on our lives. These are the minimums. Okay, there is tadabbur, contemplating over the Quran. There is, when you're listening to the Holy Quran, you have to listen to it attentively. Alright? And subhanAllah, the respect of the Holy Quran. I see people have these frames of Quran, Surah Al-Fatiha, Surah Yasin, Surah Al-Nas hanged in the homes, but they still have music blasting in those homes. I see some youngsters hanging Ayatul Kursi in the cars, but they still have music playing in those cars. And they have strange people going into those cars, and they have haram things going into those cars and haram activities happening in those cars. Respect the Holy Quran and know that the Quran will either be hujjatul laka wa alayk. It will either be an evidence, a testimony in your favor, or a testimony against your favor. So we learn these jinns have taught us a lesson. When they came, they said, Ansidu, were they Muslims? They were not Muslims yet, but they knew that this is a divine scripture. These are holy words and sanctified words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that needs to be respected and deserves respect. So they say Ansidu. And what does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say about al-insat towards the Quran? Paying attention and being silent when the Quran is recited. إذا قرئ القرآن فاستمعوا له وأنصتوا لعلكم ترحمون. فإذا قرئ القرآن فاستمعوا له, towards the end of Surah Al-A'raf, beginning just before Surah Al-Anfal, when the Quran is recited. Be silent. Pay attention to it. لعلكم ترحمون. Perhaps you will draw the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So we need to respect the Holy Quran. And those who value the Quran will be valued in the sight of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So as we have mentioned, that some scholars are in opinion that Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam recited Surah Ar-Rahman to them. Do you know why Nabi sallallahu chose to recite Surah Ar-Rahman? Because this Surah Ar-Rahman is the only surah that directly addresses human beings and jinn simultaneously, one after another. Right? 51 times there is a repetition of the ayah of the verse which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala addresses to the humans and the jinn at the same time. فَبِأَيِّ آلَاءِ رَبِّكُمَا تُكَذِّبَانِ. Allah says that which of the favors of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will both you, jinn and human beings, will you deny? Right? So the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam selected the recitation of this surah in order to deliver the message to the jinn. Now, The jinn have heard the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam reciting the Quran. Did the Quran impact on them? It impacted on them. It impacted on their lives. They immediately transformed. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in that ayah, Surah Al-Ahqaf, ayah 29, what does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say? وَاللَّوْ إِلَىٰ قَوْمِهِمْ مُنذِرِينَ. Alright? They immediately believed in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? قالوا يَا قَوْمَنَا أَجِيبُ دَاعِيَ اللَّهِ. And the verses go on and on. They believed and they transformed their life and they became du'at of Islam. They became the callers of others to Islam. Went back to Naseebeen and started propagating the message of Islam. Another point of reflection. Listen very attentively. This was once-off interaction with Muhammad S.A.W. First session and probably the last session, the only session that they had with the Prophet ﷺ. Listened to the Quran and took the Shahada and went back. Never did they interact with Muhammad ﷺ again. But their life was transformed. I want to ask you a question. How many times have you had the Quran recited to you? How many times have you had reminders repetitively said to you, don't do this and don't do that, try to be like this and try to be like that? But do we transform ourselves? No. And then you can wonder, what is the reason? Because we have taken this life for granted. We think that we're going to live here for eternity. And we think that, subhanallah, we are happy to meet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in this condition. And most of us think that we have reached the pinnacle of the servitude to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We cannot better ourselves any further. La ilaha illallah. Don't we learn from this delegation of the jinn? One session transformed their lives. One session, one lecture transformed their life. And we have people, subhanallah, maybe I'm the first one of them, I'm not excluded. We repeatedly recite the Quran, repeatedly listen to the ahadith of Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. But our lives is not transforming. We are still involved in these vices and sins. We are still backbiting. We are still hurting others. We still have these disgusting characters of ours that people are running away from us. SubhanAllah. And when you study the hadith, even some Sahaba would interact with Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam just once, one session, and that was enough to be transformed. A man, and this hadith appears in Muslim, a man that came from Najd to Medina and came to meet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, wanted to verify Islam. So he asked Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam some questions pertaining to Islam. So he asked, what is Islam? What is Islam? What are the fundamental pillars of Islam? So the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam went to and described the 5 principles of Islam. Right? The Shahada, the Salah, and so on and so forth. And this man kept on asking, is there anything else? Is anything additional to this? So the Prophet ﷺ says, no, illa anta tatawwa, unless if you want to add things voluntarily. You want prayers is obligatory, but that is an obligation. But if you want to voluntarily have your sunnah in your life, sunnah prayers, you can do that. And then towards the end, this man stands up and says, he declares his shahada, that ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah, la azidu wa la anqus. I'm not going to increase on these advices, neither am I going to decrease them. And the Prophet ﷺ looks at him and says, aflaha in sadaq. If this man, if he is truly genuine in his transformation, that his life is now transformed, is going to embed and inculcate the principles of Islam in his life, أفلح إن صدق, he's going to be successful. Success is not in money, neither is it in status, right? The real success is in the obedience of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and in the transformation of our lives. And we can go on and on. The magicians of Pharaoh, didn't they transform in one session with Musa alayhi salam? One session. They came to compete with Musa alayhi salam in magic. They were performing magic and Musa alayhi salam was performing miracles. But this session transformed the magicians and they said, قالوا آمنا برب العالمين رب موسى وهارون. They believed in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and they were staunch, steadfast in their belief, and they prepared to be subjected to the victimization and the barbarism of Pharaoh just because of this one session. My dear brothers and sisters in Islam, we can also transform. Really, transformation is not only with the people that directly interacted with messengers, but anyone that strives towards transformation, we can all transform and change ourselves. We have seen people in communities. I know them, well, that they had, bad history, and they managed to transform. It only needs to, not to be denial, and it needs effort. So, moving on, we have learned from this delegation of the Jinn that we always need to transform ourselves and that we need to respect the messages of Islam, inshallah. And we are going towards the end of this session, and inshallah I would like to conclude on this note that each one of us, we have our downfalls. We know what are our negatives in life. We know what puts us down. We know what is our weak points. Let's start working on one weak point in our daily lives. Take one weak point of yours, your weakness, and work on it for a month, even for 2 months, or even 3 months. If you manage to eradicate one weakness in your life, even if it's once a year, in 5 years, you will be eradicating 5 weaknesses, and you will see yourself to become a better and better person. Inshallah, in the next episode, we're going to look on a broader picture of the Jinn. Who are these Jinn? Right? And as I promised you that we're going to discuss about the comparison between Jinn and the demons and all those things, but the time has really elapsed, so we can't do that now. And we're going to speak in the next episode. We'll speak about the possession. Does Jinn possess human beings? Do they have kind of influence on humans? And if that is true, how can we safeguard ourselves, inshallah? This will be the point of our discussion in the next episode, before we discuss the return of Muhammad S.A.W. to Mecca. That is another interesting episode, episode 7. I'm telling you now in advance, we'll discuss how the Prophet ﷺ returned back to Mecca when his rivals were haunting him and waiting and anticipating his arrival to deal with him. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala safeguard all of us. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us better people, better husbands, better wives, better children, and better servants of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Wa jazakumullah khairan. Assalamu alaikum.